Hello again. Welcome back to From Change to Cherish. I'm your host, Luna. As you know, or as I'm about to inform you, there has been an alarming rise of gender based violence and femicide in Kenya. Did you know that 40% of women have experienced physical, emotional, or psychological violence from their intimate partner? In today's episode, we are exploring the interconnection between mental health and gender based violence. While I was doing my research, the figures were really chilling. So, a report from the Kenya National Police revealed that an average of one woman is killed every single day due to femicide. And according to the UNESCO Regional Office for East Africa, there were about 579 femicide cases in 2024 and 125 femicide cases in the first quarter of 2025 alone. I know. I just took a breather after reading that. And that just tells you how bad it is right now and why more needs to be done. Because from other sources where I was reading from, it revealed about 63% of women experience sexual harassment in public places every day, and about 65% of women experience technology based abuse. If you don't know what that is, it's mainly online harassment or online stalking. And women aged 15 to 49% experience physical abuse. And there was this other one, let me try and remember. Um, about 30% of women and 19% of men believe that a husband is justified to beat their wives. I know. And you have to understand that many of these cases remain unreported, masking the real situation of the crisis. So now discussing the interconnection between mental health and GBV, because I have come to understand that survivors often suffer in silence. And I think it comes from the point of societal stigma, because many times it's the society that says it's between two people. Why do I have to interfere between two people who are married, between two people who are together? And once the society turns their back on you, then you find survivors suffering in silence because they have no safe place that will tell them when I'm ready to get out of here, then I have some place that is accepting of me. Because I have heard of situations where once a survivor is out of an abusive relationship, the survivor's family literally cuts them out, mainly because their abusive partner was like their revenue stream. And you wonder, is money more important than a loved one? Like, to people who do that, just shame on you, honestly. Because I often say that survivors need to feel safe in order to get out of an abusive relationship or out of a toxic relationship, because there's also this misconception that, I don't know if it's a misconception or a myth, but I believe it's a myth, that in Swahili we always say siatoke to, that is just so wrong. I don't think it's that easy, because at one point this is someone you trusted, this is someone you love, this is someone you expected that they will give you respect, that they will make you feel safe. And it's hard to let go of the person in your head to the person who is making you go through something horrible at the moment. So I don't think the statement, why can't they just leave, Why do they have to let themselves go through that? I don't think that's right to say. That is also wrong because survivors need to just feel support. And once they get the support they need, then I think it boosts their confidence when they decide that, yeah, I am done and I have to get out of here. So I think one of the reasons as to why GBV often leads to a mental health condition is because oftentimes survivors suffer in silence, and the self-imposed shame and the societal shame. You look at the self-shame where they often ask themselves, am I not good enough? Am I not giving this enough? Why can't they love me back? Why are they doing this to me? Why? Many questions of themselves, making themselves feel low, making themselves feel unworthy. And that is wrong because when I was doing research on this topic, I realized that it is never your fault. It is never you that is the problem. It is never you that is causing the issue, because as much as there is conflicts in relationship, there are healthier, better ways to solve a conflict. And I realized that abusers are so good at manipulating, because this is someone you once knew, this is someone you once trusted, this is someone you once felt safe with, and just snap. They're somebody else. They're the ones who are making you feel unworthy. They're the ones who are making you feel hopeless. They're the ones who are making you feel like you don't belong. And that is their problem. That is their issue. And it is not your job to change them. It is not your job to make them become someone who they're not, because at the end of the day, they are the problem. They are the one who are at fault. They are so good at taking away your power to make you feel powerless. And I think the moment you feel powerless, you're left with no hope. And once you're left hopeless, then it leads to a worsening state of depression or PTSD or fear. I've read stories of how survivors, even a single noise or just something that makes them remember being in a certain place, just triggers them into a panic attack or into dissociation. And that just tells you how this is someone who knows you. Abusers are someone who know you. They know your fears, they know your weaknesses, they know your strengths. And once they take away your strengths, then they use your weaknesses to make you feel low. They use your fears to make you feel so low. And as I said, once you get to that point where you feel like, yeah, this is my life now, I'm not getting out of here, then it just becomes hard. It becomes depressive. It becomes hopeless, because they know how to take away your support system. They know how to take away your strength. I've often heard of how, or I mean, I'm sure you've heard of this most times, of how survivors cut their friends off, of how survivors have cut their families off, and oftentimes it's like, can't you see they're getting between us? Can't you see they're trying to take you away from me? And, they keep doing it, they keep apologizing, they keep doing it, they keep apologizing, because I think in the survivor's head it's like, they love me, they will stop, I'll make them change. And as I said, it is not your job to change them. That is just who they are. And once they take away your support system, because they know, let's say you have like a close best friend or a close sibling or just a close relative, once they take that away, and then the abuse keeps coming and coming and coming, and you realize that you actually have no one that you can talk to, that you can tell that it's getting worse, I'm going through this and I think it's getting worse. You become so isolated, and once you become isolated, then you suffer in silence and you suffer in shame. And as I said again, it is not your fault, because again, there's the shame, as I said, the shame that survivors impose on themselves, and the societal shame of what did he do? What did she do? Why did they provoke them? Why did they do that when they know they hate it? And you ask yourself, like, so if someone decides to make me feel worthless, to make me bruised up, then it's my fault. And that is wrong. I think the society needs to do more in terms of being accepting of survivors, in terms of offering support, like safe spaces, where survivors can speak up without feeling shame, without feeling fear of ridiculed or fear of backbiting when you leave. I think it's worse when, like, you talk about pain, you talk about how you're going through something or a toxic relationship. You talk to someone who makes you feel safe, but the next thing you know, it has become a conversation. Let's say to your family members, it has become a conversation with your friends, and that is wrong. I think that when someone speaks to you about the pain they're going through, just listen. And I don't know, like, if they want you to keep it a secret, but ensure that they know that when they decide to get out, that help is available, that help is ready. Because as I said, abusers know how to take away your power. They know how to take away things that matter to you. And I've often heard of things like where someone has been told to stop their jobs, where someone has been told that what they love doing is actually ugly. They take away everything you love and you're left with nothing. You're left feeling worthless. You're left feeling like they are the only ones capable of making you happy. I've heard of stories of people, of abusers telling survivors that no one will ever love them apart from them, and this is, you're telling someone that, someone you've taken away their power, and they believe you. And I think that's why it's so hard for survivors to leave, for them to suffer in silence and in shame, and there's this statement which I think is just a misconception, and it's so wrong. The statement of why can't they just leave? Why do they have to go through that? That is wrong, because as I said, this is someone you once trusted. This is someone you once felt safe with. So in your head, there's still someone that you love. There's still someone that you're feeling safe with. There's still someone that will change. So that is just a wrong statement. Like, I cannot go through that. I wouldn't let myself go through that. Why can't they just leave? Like, walk away. Why are you still there? That is wrong. It's important to make survivors feel safe. It's important to make survivors feel strength, make them feel confidence, make them feel like when they decide to get out, I would be judged or be ridiculed for getting out of a toxic relationship, because it is not your fault. So I would really suggest to stop using that statement, because it is just like the biggest misconception ever when it comes to GBV. And when it comes again to the society and how we can be accepting of survivors when they get out, I think it's important to have this information out here. um I think it's different when it comes to an urban place to a more remote place or a rural place, because I think in an urban place there's like information, there's more online resources, there's more support groups, and but when it comes to a remote place, I think remote places are more I don't know, they're more into cultural norms. They are still into their traditional ways. They're still into how it's supposed to be, and with little information and how things are changing and how they're supposed and how we are supposed to make it stop or to push for it. Because I think, let's for example, where I come from, there was this family where this woman was going like through the worst physical abusive relationship, let me say marriage. And every time she would leave, the husband's family would take a goat to her family, and then she will go back. And then it will happen again. She will leave. He will take a goat, take it to her family, and then she will come back. And then she just stopped going back home. And it happens. I think it got to the point where it was worse. Like, he burnt her with hot water on her legs, and she was admitted in a hospital. And that just tells you, like, like, for a situation like that, if the society was more informed of, if this happens, like, this is a cultural norm, but this is wrong. This happens. I've heard of cases of where even location chiefs are bribed or given, like, I don't know if I should say a reward, but that is wrong. Someone who does this should be held accountable, either arrested, and like, again, in the most remote places, I think it is rare where we see divorces or separation, because that is where you're told it'll work out, don't worry, they will change, just hold on, stick around, you'll see, hold on to the Lord and all that. But it's in those instances where now you watch news, and where GBV has led to a more fatal situation or a tragic situation that is just so much worse than what they were going through. And that's why it's important to have this information that includes what GBV is, the forms of GBV, and the like the safe houses, the numbers, the places where someone can go when they feel unsafe, the places where they can go when they want legal aid or when they want psychological services, or when they want to report a case. Because I think also another thing that makes people stay and not talk, it's because of a failed justice system. I think the justice system works maybe 65% most of the time, but you often hear of how you go to report something and someone will just give a bribe and nothing will happen. Or you go there, you report something, and you're either ridiculed. I think this mostly happens in men. I've heard of men going to report something and they're ridiculed of going through the worst situations of their lives, and that is just wrong. But I think at some point, yeah, it works, because I've heard of stories where perpetrators or abusers have faced the justice, where they have been arrested and they have not been given either bond or bail. And I think more definitely needs to be done, because, yeah, I mean, there are some good police officers out there. There are some good lawyers out there who believe in giving people the justice they deserve. But there are just others who are, I don't know, I don't want to say crooked in the mind, but like, what are you even doing there if you can't help the people you are meant to serve? So when it comes to offering or making sure that survivors know that help is available, I think another thing is support groups, therapy, and safe houses When it comes to safe houses, I don't know how. From this research I was doing, I saw that there are about 54 safe houses in the country right now, but most of them are run through NGOs, you know, and some of them, because I believe that a safe house needs to feel safe. First of all, someone needs to be empowered, and there should be legal aid services and psychological services. But you look at safe houses, from the research I did, I realized that most of them are underfunded or they end up closing because of lack of funds. Because, as I said again, most are run by NGOs. I think I'll have to do an episode on GBV safe houses in the country, because I believe that in every county, in every sub county in that county, there should be at least 2 to 3 safe houses and at least 2 mental health service centers. Like, for example, where I come from, I'm from Vihiga County, and we have like 5 sub counties. So in those 5 sub counties, I think we should have about 3 or 2 GBV safe houses and about 1 or 2 mental health service centers. Once we have that, once people see that help is available, then when they get ready, because as I always say, readiness is always key when it comes to someone living an abusive relationship or when it comes to speaking out. It's important that they realize that it is there, it is safe, they can be empowered, and that they can get the help they need. So safe houses needs to be there. There should be funds available to make sure that they run and that they are reliable. And there should be, let me say, plenty tall numbers. I mean, we know of, or if you don't know, the national tall number for GBV is 1195. It's reliable. I think I tried calling it like twice to see. So I tried twice and someone answered. So it's reliable, but I think in every county needs to have like their own GBV toll number so that someone knows I can call this number, I can request something, they can tell me where to go, where to run to, where I'll feel safe, to just have all that information out there that is reliable, that is always available. I think things like this needs to be 24/7 available and 24/7 reliable. Another source that the society can ensure is there is therapy. Therapy is good. Therapy is, I think just the idea of you wanting therapy is really brave, it's really courageous. So if you ensure that therapy is available, I mean, I know right now it's available because of the crisis of the situation. Mental health is a crisis just in general, we know that. So we have to ensure that, as I said, at least in every sub county, there needs to be at least 1 to 2 mental health service centers, and to have professionals there who can give you better coping ways, who can give you, anger management therapy, or, how to cope when you get a panic attack, how to cope when you have gone through trauma or are going through trauma, or you're just in a situation where you feel stuck. Let me say, prepare you emotionally, and once you get to the point where you want to get out, then you're mentally prepared for that. But I'm also a huge believer of support groups. I think support groups are important because in a place like that, you meet people who are in the same situation like yours. I don't want to say it's similar, but like in terms of GBV, because as I said, abuses are so good at making you isolated. But you go to a support group, you meet different people who are in different stages of healing or growth. And once you hear their stories of hope and resilience, then you feel it boosts your hope, it boosts your confidence, and what you keep going, you keep growing your hope, you keep growing your confidence. And once you get ready to get out of that toxic relationship, you will be getting out knowing that support is available, and that I had, let's say, for example, I had Mary's story, and Mary's story gave me hope that I can actually make it out, and I can actually get better out there. So you get out knowing that I'm going to be okay. It's going to be hard, but I'm obviously going to be okay. And I think support groups make you feel validated. You come from isolation, you come from hopelessness and feeling powerless, and you come at this support group, you hear stories and you feel, I'm not alone. You feel, I'm not alone. I can get through this. My pain is not shameful. My pain is not my fault, but I will definitely get through this and I will not let it define me. So I am a huge believer of support groups and their importance in the community, like just in general, for it to be a safe space. And I think in most cases support groups are safe. I remember when I was in St. Paul University, they used to have these every single Wednesday of the week. They used to have this small circle. It was just a group. A friend of mine actually introduced me to it, and we would go there. And I mean, I never shared a story, but I will just listen. And, if you listen to my podcast, I've always said how I usually struggle with my mental health. And I will just listen to people talk, and I would feel so validated. And that was so important to me. So support groups are so important, both urban areas and in rural areas, to just ensure that survivors feel safe, that they have a safe place to run to, that they have a safe place where they can express their emotions without judgment, without ridicule. And that is so important. Information definitely needs to get out there. I don't know if anyone is going to hear this, but I think the best people to spread information out there, mostly in the rural places, is the CHPs, the community health providers. They go door to door. I think they're the best people to spread information out there and to just spread awareness, in terms of what GBV is, what mental health is, what femicide is, the different forms of GBV, and what we can do as a community to push for preventative efforts. That is so important. And to whoever listens to this, I hope that is something that can get done. This is a conversation that is so complex that needs to happen every single day with everyone in the workplace, in schools, with our friends, in church, every single place, because I wouldn't want to wake up and the following morning I hear of my friend being a part of the statistic. So more definitely needs to be done. I mean, we cannot stop it right now, but we can reduce the numbers until it gets to the point where it's a non-issue. But until then, conversations like this will have to keep happening. Conferences every single day, because as I said, there's limited understanding of what the crisis really is and the effects it has on families and on communities. So let's keep this conversation going. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to keep this conversation going, follow us on all our socials. And remember, you matter, you're not alone, you're worth it. See you next.